Hello, my name is Daniel. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy real, heartbreaking cheating stories from Reddit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. This is one of those stories that lingers, like smoke in a quiet room. The kind that doesn't shout betrayal, but whispers it into your bones. The original poster, whom I'll call Grant, is 49 years old and lives in the coastal hills of Monterey, California. He's been married to a woman named Marlene for 12 years. She's 45, calm, thoughtful, with a quiet grace that made him fall in love with her all those years ago. Grant's world began to shift when Marlene had to fly to Portland, Oregon, where her stepfather was dying. He had always been more of a father to her than her biological dad ever was. She went up there to help arrange for in-home care. Grant stayed behind, holding things together, texting and calling her daily. Marlene's younger sister, Chelsea, 41, was also there. Chelsea had always been difficult. She struggled with addiction, alcohol, pills, sometimes worse. She had a way of turning every family visit into a chaotic storm. Grant remembers one video call in particular. Marlene had her phone propped up while she was helping her stepfather with his oxygen tank. Chelsea suddenly staggered into the room, completely naked, slurring words, yelling to no one in particular, drunk beyond comprehension, in front of their dying father. Grant said he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was mortified, and when he saw Marlene's face, he knew she was too. Chelsea had been living with her boyfriend, a man named Curtis, who was in his mid-40s. Curtis was also the primary caregiver for Marlene's stepdad, probably the only reason Chelsea was even allowed around. When it was time for Marlene to return home, things took a strange turn. She was supposed to fly back on Thursday. Curtis was the one driving her to the airport. According to her, there had been road construction that caused a delay. She missed her original flight and had to catch a later one. Grant hadn't thought much of it at the time. But 3 days after Marlene returned, Chelsea sent Grant a text that would unravel everything. Chelsea wrote, "They fucked." Grant, confused and trying not to spiral, responded, "Who? And did you film it? We could make a fortune." Chelsea replied, "I saw him leave her room smiling. You know she didn't miss that flight. He's not denying it either." Grant didn't even know how to respond at first. He tried to brush it off with sarcasm. Well, if they did, he's the luckiest guy alive. But inside, something had started to ache. He knew Chelsea was unwell, known for making up stories when drunk, for seeking chaos when things were calm. But even so, he couldn't ignore that small voice that now whispered at him late at night. She wouldn't, would she? He kept replaying the trip in his head, wondering what might have happened. Grant tried to laugh it off in the comments when he shared his story online, but his words were heavy, uncertain. He explained that he couldn't block Chelsea because, tragically, she was still the only person who could reach him if anything happened to Marlene's stepfather while Curtis was away. Everyone else in the family had already cut him off. Strangers online offered advice, telling him to ask Curtis to be the direct contact instead. Others sympathized, sharing their own experiences with loved ones suffering from addiction and untreated mental illness. Still, it didn't help much. The damage was already done. Even if Chelsea was lying, intentionally or not, she had planted a seed of doubt in Grant's mind. And that seed was growing, slowly choking out the trust he had always placed in his wife. The worst part? Marlene had no idea it was happening. She came home tired, emotionally drained from caring for a dying man who had raised him like his own. She slept hard, held Grant like she always did, and talked about how much she missed him. And all the while, Grant found himself wondering if she had betrayed him. He didn't want to believe it. Not from Marlene. But now he couldn't unknow what Chelsea had said. He began to feel isolated, like he was carrying a weight only he could see. He wasn't sure if he should confront his wife or wait for the feeling to pass. He wanted to believe the version of Marlene that he had always known, the woman who'd never lie, never stray, never hurt him like that. But doubt doesn't need much room to grow. And in the quiet moments, when the house was still and the memories came knocking, Grant found himself staring at her from across the room and wondering who she really was. There were two glaring problems with Chelsea's accusation that Marlene had slept with Curtis on the front porch. First, it was mid-December in Oregon, bitter wind, icy sidewalks, and a chill that sliced through even the heaviest coats. No one was out there unless they had to be. And second, Marlene was sitting right next to Grant the entire evening Chelsea claimed the affair happened. It wasn't even a question of suspicion anymore. Chelsea wasn't just unstable, she was unraveling. A week after they returned home, the spiral accelerated. Chelsea got into a physical fight with Curtis right in front of Marlene's father. Grant didn't know all the details, just that it ended with Chelsea assaulting him, screaming incoherently before she was finally taken into custody. She was placed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. Meth, alcohol, and years of untreated mental illness, every part of her life was falling apart, and she was dragging everyone around her down with her. Mid-January, Marlene's stepfather passed away. His death hit the whole family hard, but it pushed Chelsea over the edge. She had been living in the family home rent-free for years. When she learned the house was going to be sold, she lost whatever grip she still had on reality. Despite everything, the family gave her $35,000 from her father's retirement to find a new place and support herself for a while. It was a decision rooted in love, or maybe guilt, but not wisdom. A few weeks later, Grant and his sister drove up to Portland to help prepare the home for sale. He had braced himself for some mess. What he found was something else. The home Marlene's stepdad had once kept spotless was now a biohazard. There was garbage layered like sediment across every room. Half-empty bottles of tequila, some worth over $300, were scattered among moldy food containers, torn blankets, and broken dishes. And then there was the dog. Chelsea's tiny Chihuahua had done its business all over the den, and somehow, some of it was splattered halfway up the walls. Grant stared in disbelief. "How does a dog that small even do that?" he remembered whispering. The house smelled of old sweat, rot, and desperation. They had to rent an industrial dumpster just to begin clearing it out. Grant changed the locks and the garage codes, an easy task for him, a career garage door technician. It was one of the few things he could control in the chaos. And in the quiet aftermath, as he sat on the back porch alone, Grant felt something shift in him. He thought about all the people who had believed Chelsea's story, all the ones who had messaged him, saying Marlene was probably guilty, and now, with his own eyes, he had seen the wreckage Chelsea left behind. He didn't need more proof. Marlene hadn't cheated. Chelsea had lied, the same way she always did. But somehow, even that truth brought no comfort. They couldn't even take the dog with them. Chelsea refused to see them or let them near it. She's more loyal to that Chihuahua than she ever was to her own family, Marlene said softly, her voice cracking. And then things got worse. When the estate was finalized, both sisters received their full inheritance, $104,000 each before taxes. Grant and Marlene paid their taxes up front, used the rest to pay off their home, and tried to move on. Chelsea, though, took the full lump sum immediately. Grant had joked back then that she'd burn through it in 6 months. He was wrong. It took her less than 3. Less than 3 months to drink it, shoot it, snort it, everything. Gone. As the money disappeared, Chelsea's anger resurfaced, and she funneled it toward Marlene. In a series of cruel texts, she told Marlene that their father never loved her, that if he had, he would have adopted her. Chelsea had been too young to remember, but Grant remembered what Marlene once told him. Her stepfather did try to adopt her. Her birth father refused to sign the papers. Now, with the truth buried under bitterness and grief, Chelsea was rewriting their past, weaponizing it. She began calling every day, drunken, rambling voicemails, crying, begging to be allowed to sleep on their couch. Sometimes 12 calls in a single day. And every time, Marlene had to say no. It tore at her. But what else could they do? They were watching someone they loved fall apart in slow motion, and they couldn't save her. Grant knew it was only a matter of time before the phone would ring with something final, something they couldn't ignore, something they couldn't fix. As the dust settled from Chelsea's final descent into chaos, Curtis vanished like smoke on the wind. Once the money dried up, so did his presence. Grant had expected it. Men like Curtis never stay when there's nothing left to take. The last Grant heard, Curtis had moved on. No apology, no explanation, not even a goodbye. Just silence. Chelsea, predictably, didn't handle his disappearance well. She called Marlene again in the middle of the night, sobbing, rambling. Then she went quiet for days. The silence was heavier than the screaming had ever been. Marlene and Grant tried to focus on themselves, on healing, on rebuilding the sense of stability Chelsea had shattered. They poured their inheritance into their mortgage, choosing security over splurging. But even then, the pain lingered, not just from Chelsea's betrayals, but from the deeper truth that no one could save her, no matter how much they tried. And as strange as it sounded, part of Grant kept thinking about the Chihuahua, about that poor little dog still stuck in that rotting house, alone, probably scared, maybe sick. But Chelsea wouldn't let them near it. She wouldn't let them near anything anymore. When Grant shared the full story online, the responses were as expected: sympathy, outrage, pity. Some people insisted it had never been about Marlene cheating. It was always about Chelsea's spiral. Others wondered aloud, how many families are torn apart not by deliberate cruelty, but by addiction, by delusion, by people who stop being themselves long before anyone notices they're already gone. Grant didn't reply to most of the comments. There was nothing else to say. And so, life moved forward. But the quiet didn't last. This next part of the story doesn't belong to Grant and Marlene. It belongs to someone else, someone younger, but equally heartbroken. His name was Devin. He was 26, living just outside Tempe, Arizona, and married to a woman named Brielle, 27. They had met in college. He was studying mechanical engineering. She was a social work major. They connected during a tutoring session in a dingy campus library. And just like that, their story began. After graduation, Devin pursued a master's degree in Japanese. It wasn't the most conventional path for an engineer, but he believed it would open doors in international manufacturing. Brielle didn't. She told him outright she wouldn't support him financially through it. So they kept their money separate. It didn't bother Devin at first. He had a job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and eventually, it paid off. After years of grinding, he landed a high-paying position, one that required frequent travel to Japan. With that success came pressure, long hours, and a deepening exhaustion. Devin didn't have time for hobbies anymore, but he missed them. So one weekend, he splurged. He bought new computer parts, roughly $1,500 worth, to build a gaming rig. It wasn't about the games, really. It was about having something that felt like his. When Brielle saw the receipt, her reaction was ice cold. She accused him of being irresponsible, assuming he still made what he used to. When Devin told her he now made triple, she just stopped speaking to him. Then things started disappearing. Fishing rods he'd planned to use on a long-awaited trip with friends, gone. She'd given them to her uncle, apparently. His workout supplements, expensive pre-workout jars he always stocked up on, gone. She gave those to her cousin. When he asked her to reimburse him, she scoffed. "You make enough to replace them," she said flatly. Devin felt something cracking beneath the surface. Then came the worst of it. One night, as he lay half asleep in their shared bed, he heard her on the phone, whispering, planning, telling someone, presumably her sister, that she was going to move her parents into their house, that she'd make space by clearing out Devin's office, that she was going to give her brand new gaming setup to her brother. "He'll get over it," Brielle had said. The next day, Devin left work early. When he opened the apartment door, he found Brielle and her brother in his office. Everything was being packed into boxes. He stood in the doorway, heart pounding. "What's going on?" he asked. Brielle froze. Her brother looked away. "We were just cleaning," she said, her voice thin. "Were you planning to take my computer?" Devin asked her brother. The man denied it immediately. Devin didn't respond. He went to the living room, picked up the iPad they shared, and opened the messages. There it was, texts from Brielle to her brother, times, pickup instructions, a request to lie if confronted. He returned, holding the screen out. Her face went pale. He asked her why she thought she was entitled to take from him, why she would lie like that. He didn't scream, but for the first time in their marriage, his voice shook with hurt. She began to cry. Then she packed a bag and left, to stay with her sister. Devin sat on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the hole she left behind. He went out the next day and bought a lock for his office door. Then he sat down, alone, and realized he didn't know who he was married to anymore. Brielle's sister texted Devin that afternoon, calling him selfish, cold, and dramatic. The words stung more than he wanted to admit. He sat alone in the dim light of his office, staring at the door he'd just finished locking for the first time. And he couldn't help but wonder, had he gone too far? Had he overreacted? But the comments on his post were relentless in their clarity. This wasn't about a computer. It wasn't about a desk or a fishing rod or a tub of pre-workout powder. This was about something deeper, about control, disrespect, manipulation. It was about living with someone who made decisions for both of them and disguised it as love. A week after Brielle left, she called him. Her voice was soft, shaky. She asked if they could meet. He agreed. They met at a quiet park just outside of Mesa. There were kids playing in the distance, the sound of their laughter drifting through the wind like echoes from another world, one far removed from the silence that sat between them. Brielle apologized. She said she didn't mean to hurt him, that she truly believed she was doing what was best for everyone. Devin asked her plainly, "What if I took all your expensive makeup and gave it to my sister without telling you? Would that have been best for everybody?" She looked down, embarrassed. "No, I would have been furious." "Then why," he asked, "was it okay to do that to me?" She didn't have an answer. Even her sister had told her she was being unfair. After that, they agreed to try again. She moved back in. It felt good, for a little while. There was even a flicker of hope. But it didn't last. A few weeks later, Brielle started moving her boxes back into Devin's office. When he asked what she was doing, she told him she needed the space for her parents. Devin stood in the doorway, stunned. He said, "We talked about this. I said they could move in if you really needed them to, but my space stays untouched." She rolled her eyes. "It's just a room." "It's my room," he said, quietly but firmly. He picked up her boxes and set them gently in the hallway. "This is non-negotiable," he told her. "And while we're at it, we need to talk about the bills. We can't just wing it anymore." Brielle called him a selfish jerk and stormed out again, this time heading straight back to her sister's house. But things didn't go the way she had planned. Apparently, Brielle's sister had finally had enough. With 4 kids of her own, she was tired of the constant emotional mess. They argued, words were exchanged, and in the end, her sister told Devin everything. Brielle had gone to her parents' house. Devin called, and called again, and again. No answer. 2 weeks of silence later, he drove out to her parents' place and handed her the divorce papers himself. She cried, begged him to forgive her, told him they could fix it. Devin told her he wasn't sure if forgiveness was even possible anymore. She refused to sign, told him she wanted to go to counseling first. Devin shook his head. "You had time to ask for that. You didn't. You don't want help. You want control." He walked away, but the weight followed him home. She still hadn't signed the papers. The process would continue regardless, but it would be messier now, more drawn out. And still, people in the comments echoed what his own heart kept trying to ignore. "Don't go back." They said, "She hasn't changed. She doesn't want to." A few days later, everything unraveled. Brielle's parents invited Devin over. They said they wanted to talk. When he arrived, he barely recognized her. She looked fragile, thinner, pale. Her eyes were sunken. Her parents sat beside her, concerned and confused. "Why did you kick her out?" her mother asked gently. "She's falling apart." Devin felt his jaw tighten. "I didn't kick her out. I begged her to talk to me. I have the texts." He showed them, message after message, reaching out, asking her to come home. He turned to Brielle. "What did you tell them?" Her father stepped in. "She said you went back on your word, that you promised to let her brother stay with you." Devin blinked. "What?" The argument that led to their separation had nothing to do with her brother. The parents looked confused. So did Devin. Then her sister Mary was looped in. Over speakerphone, Mary confirmed what Devin already suspected. Brielle had been lying, not just about her intentions, but about everything. Her younger brother Jake, a 15-year-old freshman, had found out the truth. Brielle had been cheating. The fishing rods and supplements? They didn't go to her relatives. They went to the man she was seeing behind Devin's back. Jake caught her and used the information to blackmail her into promising he could move in, hoping to transfer into a better high school basketball program. The silence in the room was unbearable. And then, for the first time, Brielle spoke the truth. Her voice trembled. Her hands shook. But she admitted it. Every lie, every betrayal, every twisted thing she had done. And all Devin could do was sit there, his heart no longer broken, just numb. Because the truth didn't change anything. It just confirmed what he already knew. The woman he loved was gone. Jake had only been a freshman, just 15 years old, but even he knew what Brielle was doing was wrong. He caught her cheating, and instead of telling Devin, he leveraged it. He told Brielle that if she let him move in, he'd stay quiet. In his young mind, it was a way into a better school district, a better basketball program, a better life. And Brielle, terrified of being exposed, agreed. That's why she told everyone that her parents were moving in, that she lied. She thought Devin would say yes more easily if he thought it was family. But secrets like that don't stay buried for long. Her parents called her downstairs, demanding the truth. She stood there in front of everyone, pale and shaking, and finally told her side. The man she had been seeing, the one she gave Devin's belongings to, had told her he was leaving his wife. He told her he had a new job in another state and asked her to come with him. So she quit her job, just stopped showing up. No notice, no plan. But he wasn't serious. His wife found out about the affair and kicked him out, for a time. But eventually they reconciled. He moved back in, kept his job, kept his marriage, and left Brielle behind, like a discarded coat in summer. She had no job, no partner, no home, just the wreckage she created. When he told her it was over and asked her to sign the divorce papers, she broke down. She begged for another chance, pleaded to go to counseling, cried in front of her parents. Devin just stood there, feeling nothing. He had spent so long holding on to something that didn't exist anymore. When the truth finally came out, it didn't hurt. It just ended. He left her there, crying. That night, her parents called. They told him Brielle had been taken to the hospital. An overdose. Sleeping pills. They didn't say it was a suicide attempt, but the implication was clear. Her father asked, softly, if Devin would come visit. He read the message once, then again, then replied with 3 words, "I don't care." It wasn't anger. It wasn't cruelty. It was emptiness. Because the moment he discovered the affair, the moment he realized she had given away his things, lied to his face, and tried to manipulate him into giving up his space, his trust, his peace, something inside him shut down. He didn't stop loving her in one grand moment. He just stopped believing she deserved that love. The comments on his post poured in. Some told him not to go. Others said she was only sorry because the other man left. Some argued she was always planning to leave him and only realized what she lost when it was gone. One person said she made her bed, let her lie in it. And Devin agreed. She wasn't reaching out because she loved him. She was reaching out because she had nothing left. No job, no affair, no escape. Only regret. And regret doesn't fix broken trust. It doesn't erase lies. It doesn't rebuild a heart that's already decided to stop waiting. So Devin stayed home, and he didn't look back. Devin's story is deeply painful, but it reflects a truth many people live with in silence. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes loyalty becomes a weapon in the wrong hands. If you're in a relationship where your partner consistently disrespects your boundaries, lies to you, manipulates your emotions, or dismisses your needs, take a step back and ask yourself what love is costing you. Love should not require the erosion of your identity. It should not demand the surrender of your personal space, your dignity, or your peace. Toxic partners often only show remorse when their manipulation fails, not because they understand the damage they've caused, but because they lost control. If someone is only sorry after they've been caught, that's not accountability. That's desperation. And if you're finding it hard to walk away from someone who keeps hurting you, remind yourself, staying out of guilt is not kindness. It's self-abandonment. Protect your heart. Guard your peace. And know that it's okay to walk away, even if they cry, even if they beg, even if their world is falling apart. You didn't break them. They did that themselves. And your job isn't to fix what they chose to destroy. Your job is to heal and to live.